Welcome back, everyone, to Stage B, sponsored by Fiege. So as we're slowly approaching lunchtime and air quality in this room is getting fresher and fresher, as we all can feel. So let me introduce you our next presentation. Our next speaker is a developer advocate for Google. Means he's very good at technical stuff and programming. And I'm really looking forward because he will present us a modern web user journey. He will try to share his knowledge and his expertise about new technologies, meaning creating amazing user experiences by having technologies that find the best balance between being very fast at loading times, but also interactive, new progressive web applications. And I want to introduce him with a short quote from the presentation text, the info that I have. To build a web experience that loads in an instant, that upgrades you to maximum interactivity and engagement. We are making it happen. Come to learn how. Please give up a warm applause for Rowan Merewood. Rowan Merewood.
Thank you. So, thank you for joining me here in the sauna. I will try and keep you awake through this section. As you heard, I am an engineer, so do I actually have any other developers in the audience today? A couple, okay. There are a couple code slides, so everyone else feel free to look away at that point, or just to illustrate how little work you need to do to make some of this possible. I'm also, as a developer, if you're a product manager, you're probably aware that we're not very good at time management, so I'm probably going to run out of time here. If I do, please feel free to carry on the conversation with me here, so on Twitter or on Google+. No? You're not meant to laugh at that. Or you can also find me on GitHub as well. I want to talk a little bit about what the web means to me then. So I'm a developer advocate for the web and Chrome. And one of the reasons I think this is important is because the web has really made it possible for anyone to get online and create a platform where they can start sharing their ideas, their services, they can sell things, they can advertise, and it's incredibly simple. When I started, like, all you needed was a laptop and a text editor and an internet connection, and you could start publishing things online. It's debatable whether that was a good idea or not, but that possibility really changed the world. And it meant that we ended up with a lot of sites that used to look like this. So you may have heard of Google. This is how we started off way back in about 95, 96, maybe. So a lot of you may have been creating sites like this. If you were like me, though, you were probably creating sites more like this. And this is what a lot of the web looked like throughout the late 90s. Now, the problem is, back then, this was slow. But actually, things haven't really gotten better, right? The state of the modern web has not really improved. In fact, what we're looking at now on the average mobile page is this. 214 requests going off, over half of them to load advertising-related functionality on that page. And that means that page on average is going to take 19 seconds to load on a 3G connection. Now, as you've probably heard this stat before about the number of users that will leave your page the longer it takes to load, I think you can see that 19 seconds, that's a lot of users that you're losing. So that's the problem. What can we do to fix it? Since I started off with 2 acronyms, I will actually define them for you. So first of all, who's heard of AMP already? Yeah, a couple of you. Who's seen AMP in the search results? Okay, a few people aware. And who's heard the term PWA? Okay, the same, I think those are the same hands, aren't they? Okay, accelerated mobile pages then is a HTML format from us, from Google, that is an open standard that allows you to create very high-performing web pages. That it means that we can give you that instant loading experience that was a problem with standard mobile web. Then progressive web apps is essentially what would happen if you went out and just did the web right. So rather than making all of those mistakes that create those slow pages, how can we create really good experiences that are actually much closer to what people expect from a native application? To give you that from a developer point of view, when we say PWA, what I like to think of it as is we used to say Web 2.0, and that was, in a lot of ways, just a way to allow us to charge 2.0 our consultancy fees. But what PWA means as a developer is we can now quantifiably define that good web experience. But what it also means for you as users and for your customers is that they can now raise their expectations of what they should expect from a good website. So this means when they come to your site, they actually know that they should be expecting this slick, fast experience, not sat there with a loading screen waiting for something to happen. And to try and visualize this for you, this is what I mean by when we measure how the web experience goes. So if you have this measure of how much of a PWA you've built over here, and a measure of how happy your users are, then down here, this is our 19-second loading time. And then we have a number of quick wins that you can do that are going to get you that kind of immediate hockey stick. And then up here, there's kind of the advanced stuff that's going to take a bit more work, but is going to get you right to the top. What are PWAs then? We've tried to define 4 main pillars of what's capable with a PWA. So they're fast, they're integrated with the user's device, they're reliable regardless of the network connectivity, and they're engaging as well. And to give you an example of some of the things we mean by this, you can start to see these out in the wild. I've only included a couple examples here because we're quite pressed for time, but if you want to find me afterwards, I'm more than happy to demo a variety of sites for you on my phone. But Starbucks has done this. So on app.starbucks.com, this has automatic sign-in. So if you sign into your Starbucks account and save the username, when you next come back to that site on any other device where you're logged into Chrome, it will automatically sign you into the site, not just pre-fill your username and password, but bring you straight into that signed-in experience. Likewise as well, we have Trivago, who have been making use of the technology called Service Worker, which essentially allows them to create an offline experience in their web page. So you can try this if you get bored of me talking. You can always go to trivago.com on your phone, try browsing around, and then put it into airplane mode and see how the site behaves after that. You can still continue using the site. You can browse around some of your past pages. And if you run into something where it really doesn't work, they give you a little maze game where you can tilt your phone and you can guide a little ball around a maze. So again, all of these things with PWAs mean that you are keeping the user in the experience. So that's really the point with Trivago here, is now it means that if I'm browsing around on their site and I lose my connection, I don't drop out of the Trivago experience. If I accidentally tap the next link, I don't end up with a white page or Chrome's offline dinosaur. I end up with a branded Trivago experience telling me that I just need to wait until my connection comes back and I can try again. So as you can see, that was really helping them keep their users in the funnel and help them get on to their purchase once they got that connectivity back. And what we try and do is, I was a bit vague and hand-wavy with my graph. When I said quantifying, I mean, we really do allow you to quantify it. So your development team should go and look at this tool, Lighthouse, which is here on developers.google.com, web tools Lighthouse. You can run this against your site, and this will basically give you an audit and a rating at the end that will tell you the capabilities and performance of your site, and it will also give you a number of options for things you can do to go ahead and improve it. Likewise, I'm hanging around a bit after this, so if anyone wants to run this on their site, I'm happy to sit down with you and give this a try. Okay, so that's PWA. PWA is the best of the modern web that you can implement right now. AMP, then, is a way of actually getting on that first step to building a PWA. AMP is a technology that allows you to rapidly build very fast web pages. So I have a similar set of pillars here. This is what we really focused on when we created the AMP format. It needs to be fast up front. It needs to be easy for developers to implement. It needs to be mobile friendly. We also want to make sure that it's an open standard, so this isn't some kind of closed Google proprietary thing. This is an open standard that anyone can implement and anyone can consume. And perhaps most importantly, we wanted to ensure that people using this can actually make money with it as well. To use a car analogy then, this is what we end up with. If this is sort of the state of the mobile web, then our average mobile web page is here, right at the back of the pack, taking 19 seconds to load. And then what AMP allows you to do is very easily get into this top tier of performance. And I kind of want to stress, if you have a committed development team, you can hand-tune your site and you can build these really high-performance experiences, because if you cater directly to your needs, then you're going to be able to outperform a general tool. But for the vast majority of cases, AMP is going to allow you to do a huge amount of high-performance stuff for very little return, for very little investment. AMP itself is made up of 3 distinct parts. We've got the AMP HTML format, so this is what you're actually writing on your page. We've got the JavaScript library, which runs that format and transforms that into what the browser is displaying. And then we have the Google AMP cache. So this is where we store your AMP pages so that when someone searches, we're actually able to pre-render this and serve this up immediately to the user. So even though AMP as a format is fast, we can also pre-render it, meaning that before the user is even tapped on that link, we can have that content ready for them to see. And so in a world where every single microsecond counts in terms of getting content in front of the user, this can be a real advantage for you. I wanted to illustrate some of the patterns that this helps correct then. So one of the things that you may have run into is if people have been telling you, oh, you need to get your site on screen as quickly as possible, people have started doing things like this. So the first thing is I see a loading screen, then I see the header come in, then some navigation, and then maybe eventually I'll see the product that I came to your site to look for. This is not really an effective strategy. I came here to see the product. A lot of the time, developers are often quite happy that, oh, we got the branding on screen, so the user knows something's happening. It is an improvement over nothing, but you really need to focus on getting that critical content out there first. The other pattern then is this. So hopefully more hands for this one. Who likes looking at pictures of cats? Really? You don't? No cat fans here. Okay, this example might not work. But this happens to me on a fairly regular basis on standard web pages. I come in, and I see this picture of a cat, and I want to tap on it. So I hover my finger over, and I'm just about to tap, and before I do, this ad pops in, and it rearranges the content of the page. The ad appears right on my finger, and instead of tapping on the cat, I tap on this, and I get the ad experience instead of the content I was looking for. There are lots of ways to fix this. If you've got a well-designed web page, then you shouldn't be running into this problem. But again, AMP allows you to automatically fix this problem. So what AMP does is it actually ensures that when you lay out your page, that layout is entirely static. So even if I had an ad up here, then that space is already reserved for the ad. So it's going to load slightly slower than the main content, but the user's not going to get surprised by things being rearranged on the page, and they're going to be able to see what they came for first, and if they want to tap a link, that link is going to remain in the same place for them as well. Okay, the point of this talk then, how do we go from this concept over to the PWA concept? I really wish I could take credit for this GIF, but it's not. This is someone on Twitter. There are a couple methods of doing this. And I wanted to give you the kind of balance of when you're considering where should we be putting our efforts. On the AMP side, these are the two of the benefits that you have here, this instant delivery and this optimized discovery. But what AMP does is to get that performance, we put a number of limitations on you. So that means a lot of the JavaScript that you might want to run, you're actually quite restricted in what you can do on an AMP page. And likewise, because AMP is focused on delivering cached content, it can make it more challenging to deliver dynamic content over AMP. In retail, that often means doing things like real-time price updates or stock availability. These might not be suitable use cases for an AMP page. A progressive web app, though, it means that you have a slightly slower first delivery because you need to push that stuff to the user. It's not easily embedded in other locations. AMP, for example, will appear inside of the News app in Google. We just announced yesterday that AMP is usable inside of Gmail, or will be when we release that. But what the PWA gives you access to is these advanced platform features. So when I talked about automatic sign-in, you can do that with a progressive web app. You have access to Android Pay in there, so you can actually do native payments. You have access to the camera, to Bluetooth, to the orientation sensors, and so on. And that also means that they're highly dynamic. So all of that flexibility you can do within a progressive web app, but it means that you're responsible for managing the performance of it. The first pattern I want to show you then is going from AMP content to a progressive web app. What I like to think of is this is kind of your front door into your website. So AMP provides like a landing page for your users that can perform very quickly, can give them that hook into the first part of the funnel, and then you transition them into your progressive web app afterwards. To give you an example of how this works then, in your AMP page, you're actually using this tag here, AMP install service worker. So I mentioned it before, but a service worker is a piece of JavaScript that can basically run in the background for your page, and this is what allows you to do things like make your content available offline. You can receive push notifications to your website and display them to the user. And what this does here is, in this example, I'm effectively just showing when the user hits my AMP page, I load a service worker, and I'm going off to my main website, and I'm prefetching some of that content. So it's ready in the user's browser, and as soon as they tap on any link out of the AMP content to go to the main page, they don't need to initiate anything from the network. It's already there and ready to go in their browser. Now, the other pattern then is, in this example, AMP was like a different format from your main web page. So in the same way that you might maintain different translations for different languages, you might also maintain an HTML version and an AMP version. But AMP itself is just another HTML library, so there's actually nothing to stop you from just writing some of your pages directly in AMP as well. And that works like this. We have this site, ampbyexample.com, which conveniently, not only along with showing you these AMP examples, is actually written in AMP as well, so the site is an example. But if you go here, and especially if you visit this on your mobile device, then what you'll see, you can't read this, but to give you an idea of the scale, there's a manifest associated with this site. And what that manifest does is it just describes some properties about the site. So an icon, a short name, what the home page is, and so on. And that means that when the user visits in Chrome like this, they'll get this prompt to add the site to their home screen. And when they add it to the home screen, it will go, with an icon, and it will look to the user exactly like a native app on their device. So this is why I really talk about this, is that fast front door into these experiences. AMP lets you build this very quickly, very easily, and it means that you don't need to ask the user to do an app download to get into your content. You can seamlessly transition them from browsing your website to having an installed version of your website that acts just like an app. I wanted to show you a few examples then. And again, I'm always happy to go into way more detail after this as well. Okay, so this is Snapdeal. This is a retailer over in India. And what I'm doing here is I'm searching for men's shirts on Snapdeal. And I've got the developer tools open on the side here. You can always tell when you've discovered AMP content in search because we'll display the AMP logo and the lightning bolt here indicating that it's AMP. Now what that means is because this is turned up at the top of the results here, over in the developer tools, I'm looking at all the requests that have been fired when I made this search. Down the bottom, you can actually see that the Snapdeal content has been loaded when I'm on this page. So even though I haven't visited Snapdeal yet, we've already gone off and fetched the AMP page, and we've actually pre-rendered it in the background, which means that when I tap this link up the top, it will be almost instant for that page to load because we already have the content, and because we know the layout is static, we can pre-render it as well for the user. And then what Snapdeal does is down here, there's a call going off to install their service worker as well. So I've got that instant experience, and what is a potential pitfall is if I don't do this, if as a user I get used to this instant experience here, but I tap on one of these shirts because I want to see more of it, I'm suddenly going to be faced with a spinner while I wait for the main site to load. By bringing the service worker in here, it means that again, when I tap on this next product, Snapdeal have now gone off and already fetched what they need for that next product to show. So again, I never actually have any of those slow loading experiences because at each stage, we're predicting what we think the user might want next, and we're going off and fetching it. Okay, what do I think you should be doing then? We have ampstart.com. This is a selection of templates and sample pages that you can go and look at to see what's possible inside of AMP, to give you some inspiration to see where you could start. And then once you've started implementing, we try and put all of these use cases, all of these tags, all of the detail up on ampbyexample.com. So that's where we have both the playground where you can try stuff out, but also examples of every single AMP tag up there as well. And then I wanted to give you a quick preview of some of the more interactive stuff that you can do with AMP, which is enabled through AMP bind. Now, when I talked about AMP sites being static, a lot of the time people would kind of say, oh, we thought AMP was for publishers, it's just for news sites, it's just these static pages. There's actually a whole bunch of interactivity you can add without needing your own custom JavaScript in there. So on ampbyexample.com, we have an example product listing where you can actually go in. And what AMP bind does is, with very high performance, it does allow you to do things like changing the color. And when you change the color, we're actually picking up the availability of the stock, the available sizes, and so on. So you can have those rich experiences inside of AMP. And you can also do the entire journey all the way through to adding to your shopping cart as well. So I know that was kind of a whirlwind tour through this, mostly because I tried to cram about 2 hours of content into half an hour. But really what I wanted to do was give you a taster of some of the stuff that's possible, and hopefully this is just the start of the conversation. So I think we have time for some questions now, and then I'm hanging around for a few hours after this as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rowan Merewood. Yes, it's true. We have about 5 minutes for questions, and I'm sure there will be questions. So who wants to start, please? Yeah, thank you very much. Please speak loud and clearly.
Hello. I was wondering, do these pages work in all browsers, or do you have to use Chrome to have the full user experience?
Thank you.
Yep, so cross-browser compatibility was a huge issue for us. So it's actually, I like to think of it as one of the other benefits of AMP, is because it's really a component and JavaScript library, it means that a lot of the cross-browser compatibility issues, the team has worked on solving those. So you should be able to safely use AMP components and just trust that they will work everywhere. A good example of this is that we actually ran into some quite complex scrolling issues on mobile Safari that the AMP team worked to solve inside of those components. So on the whole, these should work everywhere and you shouldn't have to worry about it.
Great news. So, who wants to be next? Yeah, thank you very much.
Hello, thanks for introducing AMP to us. And I have a question, if you can shortly describe the relationship between AMP and React-like frameworks. I guess there are some subsets of challenges you solve with AMP which React solves as well. Just briefly, you can describe it. Thank you.
Thank you. So the relationship between AMP and something, sorry, I didn't understand.
So it's between AMP and React is another front-end framework for building websites. React is a library that came from Facebook, and actually you can kind of think about React and AMP as existing at the same level. They both create their own components for delivering these web experiences. There are ways that I'm happy to go into later of how you can embed AMP components within like a React-based site. There are some examples of people who are using React to provide the sort of the shell, and then they're using AMP to provide the content. But on the whole, for the capabilities of caching AMP and syndicating it to other locations, that's where you need an AMP page as a whole, because that's the only way we can guarantee those performance characteristics about it.
Hi, quick question. Are PWAs available for all platforms, both Android, iOS? They don't have any compatibility issues?
You want to add something, or was that? Okay, thank you very much.
So I do have a slide for this somewhere that I could pull out. But if you think of PWA as an umbrella term, encompassing a number of capabilities. So it's things like, can it do payments? Can it support service worker to do offline? Can it do notifications? So we have a breakdown of the different browsers and what capabilities they support. But the good news is that as this is becoming more and more popular, more and more browsers are starting to support this. So as a good example, Microsoft announced with Edge that they are actually starting to make progressive web apps available in the Windows Store. Safari has announced that they intend to implement Service Worker as well. So even though these should work across all browsers, more and more browsers are actually supporting that functionality to give you the full experience as well.
So we have time for one last quick and short question. Is anybody who wants to know something? I'm sure you can talk privately on coffee or with lunch or on Google+. And thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much, Rowan Merewood.